of Lakeland Drive, that is owned by the state of Mississippi. They requested that, they did not want, they wanted to withdraw their properties from the rezoning request. And for a point of clarity, the state had originally submitted a zoning application for a rezoning of that property. And because we were in the process of looking at rezoning the property across the street, we decided to go ahead and include it as one zoning rather than try to process two zoning applications. So we just want you to be aware that they are requesting that the 5 acres they were requesting as a part of the comprehensive rezoning not be included in that. But we wanted to, like I said, give you the history on that they had originally submitted an application, but after it was determined that we were working on a similar project, we were going to just include it as one application.
I'm sorry. Let's say that again.
Okay.
So, what we see there, is that the property in question?
That's the property that's in question. The property that the state is they have 5 acres that's to the south is the property that's just west of the baseball field on Lakeland Drive. Like I said, they have 5 acres, and essentially what would happen is the portion that's on the south side would go away in the rezoning. It would not be included. They asked that their property not be included in the rezoning, even though they did not submit the application. The city submitted the application.
So the only property that's requested to be rezoned is north of Lakeland.
No, we're requesting that. I'm just letting you know that the state had asked that their 5 acres not be included in that, and we provided you a copy of the letter.
Where is this 5 acres located?
On the south side of Lakeland Drive.
And that Department of Wildlife Fisheries.
Yes,
property.
right. And like I said, they were originally going to submit a separate application, but since we were working on the rezoning, we just included it as a part of ours.
They didn't say why they wanted to withdraw it.
No, they didn't.
Is that part, the south part, is that a part of the park?
It's a part of that LaFleur, park area, yes, sir. But that's owned by the Wildlife Parks and Fisheries.
So do I hear you saying that you still adding their 5 acres, although they do not want it to be?
They asked that it not be included, but they didn't submit an application. The city of Jackson submitted the application. They did not submit it. I'm just making you all aware that they had made that request. That's all.
We'll be trying to zone that part. The city of Jackson trying to rezone it.
We were, because like I said earlier, the state of Mississippi had submitted an application for us to process for those 5 acres. But after it was made known to them that the city of Jackson was in the process of working on a rezoning for the property across the street, we thought that it would be most expeditious if we would just include them in one application, because the processing would have been the same. So we included it as a part of what we were doing. But since then, the state has submitted a letter saying that they would prefer that their property not be included in the zoning, so that's for you to give consideration to. But we just wanted you to know that that request had been made. But the city of Jackson intends to proceed with our application as we submitted.
The city owns that property
On the north side,
on the north side.
yes, sir, on the north side.
They own it.
We do.
For clarity, Mr. President,
Yes, sir, I'm sorry, go ahead.
the application, and I understand that the application is not incomplete
No, our
without the
application,
documentation from the state
no,
stating that they have withdrawn their request to have their portion of this particular application process?
No, no ma'am. Our application is complete. We are planning to move forward with what we've submitted. We just wanted you to be aware, and we provided you with that letter from Wildlife Parks and Fisheries that said that they would like for the 5 acres they originally wanted to be rezoned in a separate application to be taken out. Like I said, they had an application to submit, and they had submitted it, but when they found out that we were doing the rezoning across the street, we put that in one application. And so they submitted the letter, and you all should have that in your packet.
But can the city do that with state property?
Well, we're doing a comprehensive rezoning. So the zoning ordinance allows us to do a comprehensive rezoning, which would include that area along with any other areas. But anyway, we just want
Yeah,
you
we need to
to,
be clear on that. That's a key point. It's comprehensive reason, which the city can do. I'm sorry.
okay,
Mr.
so
Allen.
you can go ahead.
All right, well, Mr. Chairman, just for everybody's edification, forget the state property. This is a city requested comprehensive rezoning. So they decided to include both sides of Lakeland Drive, just so if one side is rezoned, the other contiguous side of Lakeland Drive would be light zoned and everything would be compatible. That's the only reason you see both sides like that proposed by the city. So that's all that is.
We can't consider this until we do a resolution, is that correct? It gives us the authority to do that?
No, that's coming.
No, a resolution is done to amend the comprehensive plan. The resolution has nothing to do with the rezoning.
I go back to the question you just asked though, about who owns the property, and can we rezone someone else's property?
With the comprehensive rezoning, you can.
Okay.
If it's over 10 acres or more, the city can choose on its own to do a area-wide rezoning, comprehensive rezoning, yes.
What effect will that have on the Little League baseball park, the museum, and art museum, and all those buildings over there?
None, it's not included. It's not included in there.
It's not included.
If we say, then we'll take questions.
Okay, so should we go to the next one? Okay, this is the zoning map for the area. It shows Area A, which is on the north side of Lakeland Drive, shows that it's zoned SUD. And there's an institutional use. There's actually several uses of property on that land. There's a commercial use there. There's 2 cultural uses, and then a professional office that's on that property. Okay, and then you have the area south of Lakeland Drive, which is the area on the bottom, the short area that we said that's just west. That's just west of the baseball field. Those are the 5 acres that the state had originally wanted to be a part of the rezoning. Okay. The future land use map shows the designation of public space, public and open space. Okay, this is the proposed zoning for the subject property. As you can see that it's C3. Okay, we just wanted to show you the properties that were within a mile radius of this area. You see, as I stated earlier, you have all of the property to the east of the interstate that goes back to the Old Canton Road and Fondren area. And as you can see on the map, the green dot down represents a proposed development that's going to go in there, a mixed-use development. To the north, to the next green dot, that shows where the district at Eastover is now under construction. Okay, and this just shows the travel distances to the area. These are site photos for the area. As you can see, this is the subject property in the top left. You can see the Smith World Stadium. And then, as I said, you know, there are several uses on this property. If you would look to the west, that's where you would see the Crawdad Hole and then the Mississippi, Sports Museum. And then also to the picture in the top right, that shows the subject property as well. And then on the west side of the subject property is actually the Ag Museum, and then south of the subject property is a property, immediately south, just west of the baseball fields. Okay. These are just site photos of the Lakeland Drive corner. The property that it says that's east of the subject property is actually the property that's on Lakeland Lane. Okay, these are the grounds for granting a rezoning according to section 1703.02.1-A of the zoning ordinance. A rezoning of a property shall not be granted unless the applicant can prove by clear and convincing evidence either that there was a mistake in the original zoning or a substantial change in the land use character of the surrounding area which justifies rezoning the property in a public need for additional property in that area zoned in accordance with the request in said application since previous city council action. These are the uses that are permitted in the C3 General Commercial District. Staff recommendation. Staff recommends the approval of the requested comprehensive rezoning of parcel 442 and a portion of parcel 444-9 from special use district to C3 general commercial with the condition that protective covenants be filed, which would prohibit the use of the property for automotive service and repair establishment, auto and truck rental businesses, auto and truck sales, car washes, mini warehouses, parking garages, produce stands, secondhand stores, transit vendors, and wholesale outlets. The recommendation is based on staff being of the opinion that there has been a substantial change in the land use character of the surrounding area that justifies rezoning the property and a public need for additional property in that area zoned in accordance with the request in said application since any previous city council action. However, staff does recognize that the C&U Community Mixed Use District pedestrian oriented would be an appropriate alternative zoning district for the proposed areas for rezoning. The C&U zoning district would also eliminate the need for protective restricted covenants due to less intensive types of land uses allowed in this district. This recommendation is based on staff being of opinion that there has been a substantial change in the land use character of the surrounding area that justifies rezoning the property and a public need for additional property in that area zoned in accordance with the request in said application since any previous city council action. And these are all of the uses that are permitted by right in the community mixed use district. Okay, that's it. And we want to also point out that we had put in your package as a part of our staff report, that we do recognize that there is a reverter clause that's attached to the property that the city of Jackson owns. And we also stated in there, we put in the information for you to show that the commercial districts, that parks and open spaces are allowed in the commercial districts. So that still would allow that future, the designation that's on the future land use plan. That does not change the land use of that property if with the rezoning. With either the rezonings, the parks and institutional uses could remain, so that does not change the opportunity to use that property for any other type of land use. And then also, we want to note that we do recognize that there is opportunity for adaptive reuses all along that Lakeland Drive corridor. The office has received numerous requests for zoning verification letters for the different kinds of uses that could be used on that particular piece of property. And then also within that entire Lakeland Drive corridor, we have received requests about the different kinds of uses that could be there. And then also, we have, we will be receiving soon zoning action application to rezone some of the property that's along the border that's just east of the Shell station there. So, and then also, we would like to point out, Kitty, could you go back to the next, where we were showing the video? Okay, good. This one. We'd also, like I said, point out to you all that maybe about a year and a half, couple of years ago, we rezoned about 23 acres of property from SUD to Community Mixed Use 1 to allow for the big retail mixed use district called the District at Eastover to take place in that area. And then also with the proposed development called the Median, we're of the opinion that these two multi-million-dollar developments have also generated an interest in that Lakeland Drive corridor. And then if you look at the corridor, you can see that its proximity to I-55 does promote the idea that this would be a good opportunity to look at some adaptive reuses, low-intensity commercial uses for that particular corridor of Lakeland Drive.
Okay, let's clarify.
Okay.
So is it a request either or?
Would you mean either for community mixed use or C3? Right. Either one of those would work there. As you can see, as we stated, if we do the C3, because there are some uses that are allowed in C3 that we think could be considered nuisance uses, and you have to consider whether or not that's the kind of use that you would want as an entranceway into the Lakeland Drive corridor. We think those uses would not be conducive or compatible to that area or an attractive use for that corridor. But it still would also allow for recreational uses, and the community mixed use has uses that are less intensive than what you would find in an outright C3 district, and then it also does provide for other components of uses that would include some components of residential, institutional, and commercial uses.
So you're asking for either C3 with a specific restriction
Right.
or CMU?
And CMU 1 does not allow those uses that we consider to be incompatible uses.
Would I be safe in striking this line through here?
State property.
Well, you know, you all, like I said, and maybe I did not do a good job of explaining it to you. The state is actually not a part of this rezoning.
Right.
They sent a letter saying that they did not want their 5 acres included as a part of it. They're asking to withdraw from an application they didn't submit.
Okay. Is that currently SUD?
Right, all of that is SUD.
The whole section up there is?
Pretty much everything there is SUD.
I have two questions.
Brown?
The first one, would you explain to me what the low intense commercial is?
Low intensity uses, Akita, would you go back?
I want the layman term.
Well, when we say low intensity uses, we're talking about uses that are not, can you go to the staff recommendation? You see the uses that we listed here: automotive service and repair establishments, auto and truck rental, auto and truck sales, car washes, mini warehouses, parking garages. We just think that those are uses that are not compatible to that particular area, and all of those uses are included in the C3 zoning district. Okay, and so.
Why they call low intensity for commercial?
No, those are high intensity uses there. Those are considered high intensity uses because, you know, they could be considered nuisance uses.
Yeah, I
so to
understand, but you
speak.
said we could approve low intensity commercial use, right?
Right, and
Yes.
the low intensity, you find the less intrusive uses
Yes.
in community mixed use one. Yeah.
Well, the second question, Mr. President, this is probably something you can't answer, but I hope you can. Why did the state withdraw? If they were initially a part of this, you said they,
Now, I can't answer that, I can't answer that question for you. Like I said, we just wanted you all to know that, because they submitted a letter. We just recently
Was it in our
received that
package?
letter, and it should be in your package. They just recently submitted that letter, but we wanted you to be aware that they had sent that letter.
Okay, other questions, comments? Ms. Williams, from a legal standpoint, I guess we'll handle this as a regular case and have proper opposition. Very good. Ready for the city?
Yes, sir, unless you all have any questions for us.
Okay, is there a spokesperson for the opposition?
I think it's perplexing that the public has to come to a hearing to know what's involved in the case. I've been asking for a copy of this application since it was filed. So I'm responding to something I've seen today, so put the map back up if you would, that shows the area they're considering.
And your name for the record,
Thomas I. Starling, I'm an attorney for the protestants. I live within sight of Smith Wheel Stadium, so I'm objecting as a resident also. 15 minutes is such a short amount of time. I like those opposed to this to stand, at least you know they were here. And if given time, would voice their opposition.
Thank you.
I filed a motion to dismiss this application on the grounds that we weren't given notice. No sign was put on Jamie Broyles' part. We didn't even know he was involved in this. The title to this property will revert to the state of Mississippi the minute the city says it's not going to use it for parks and recreation. We think that's irresponsible. The city, to meet its legal responsibility to provide for the morals, general welfare, and public welfare, must maintain parks and recreational facilities. Smith Wheels is used by the Jackson youth of this city. Over 300 of these children Saturday were out utilizing Smith Wheels Stadium. The use of this property for parks and recreations has not changed. We do not think the city has met its burden to show there's been a change in the character of the neighborhood. I would like to submit on behalf of the protestants, for the record, the motion to dismiss the application and our statement of protest, which includes the report of Larry Smith, over 45 years' experience with the Jackson Planning Department, Central Mississippi Planning and Development District. He concluded no change in character of the neighborhood, no need for additional C3 zone properties. This is not in accordance with the land use plan. For all of these reasons, it should be denied. Now, this case, C3 uses will create a nightmare of traffic on Lakeland. It is, you can go out there now and wait 30 minutes to get to the interstate. So it'll have that adverse effect. It'll have an effect on the Mississippi Sports Hall of Fame, the Mississippi Children's Museum, the Natural Science Museum, the Ag Museum, the Bellhaven neighborhood. For all of these reasons, it should be denied, and I'd like representatives of some of those museums to speak.
Mr. Starling, the question. You don't mind.
Yes.
You state that y'all was not notified.
There's a small sign on the Smith Wheel site. There's a small sign on the property across the street, about this big.
But you never received a letter.
No, I asked for the application. I came over to the zoning department and I said, can I have the application? I need to see what property is involved. I was told to go file a motion for a public records request. I went on August 11th and filed my request to get a copy of it. As of to date, I have never received it. The first time No, it's a picture before that. This property does include baseball fields. All of this property is where the baseball fields are located. That's the first time we've seen that. Between now and the city council, I'll get enough opposition to this that they'll know that that area around it opposes it. The city has a duty to maintain parks and recreation for its youth. We should not be getting rid of those.
Legal. Were they supposed to be notified of the rezoning?
The zoning ordinance states that when you do a comprehensive rezoning, that you notify the property owners that are to be, the properties that are to be changed. The two properties that are being changed are owned by the city of Jackson and the state of Mississippi, and we notified those two property owners. In addition, in terms of the property not being put on the Jamie Lynn Boyle Park, if you know that property is heavily wooded, and if you put a sign there, you won't be able to see the sign. You put the sign, okay, we put the sign in the most visible location. Also, the zoning ordinance says that you have to put it in a paper of circulation at least 15 days prior to the first public hearing. The information was published in the Mississippi Link as the zoning ordinance stated, and it also included a map. So the city of Jackson met its requirements in terms of ensuring that this property was duly documented for publication and notification.
If I had any time left, I would like to address that. This 15 minutes goes pretty fast. So.
Thank you for letting me speak to you. I'm Rick Cleveland. I'm the executive director of the Mississippi Sports Hall of Fame and Museum, and I'm also a proud citizen of the city of Jackson. The Mississippi Sports Hall of Fame and Museum and its board of directors are mightily concerned about the rezoning issue along the Lakeland and I-55 corridor. The idea of rezoning this area, specifically the Smith Wills Stadium, Michael D. Johnson, and now I learned the Jamie Fowler Park, from special use to C3 is alarming. We do not believe that a big box store fits into the character of this neighborhood. As the commission surely knows, the city, state, and private entities have invested millions of dollars into the educational, cultural, tourism infrastructure in this neighborhood. We would like for the Planning Commission to consider these investments and the effect that retail establishments would have on the museums and the recreation facilities. Further, the Mississippi Sports Hall of Fame and Museum would like for the Planning Commission to consider these points. The rezoning from C3 to C3 from special use is not supported by any change of character in the neighborhood as is required by law. Indeed, the formation of the LaFleur Museum District has reinforced, strengthened, and solidified the area's identity as a destination tourist attraction featuring 4 world-class museums. Presently, point 2, presently approximately 60,000 vehicles a day travel the Lakeland Drive I-55 corridor, creating a congested traffic situation that slows to a crawl during rush hour. And when I say slow to a crawl, that is maybe understating. It slows to a stop lots of times. It backs up onto the interstate. The addition of a big box and other retail will exacerbate what is already a major traffic problem. In our opinion, the infrastructure simply does not support the idea. Number 3, while we would love to see a Costco or a big box store in the city of Jackson, we do not believe it is compatible with this area. it is not fit for our neighborhood. We fear, number 4, we fear that this rezoning effort would open a Pandora's box of commercialization. What's next? The LaFleur's Bluff State Park, the golf course, the North Jackson Youth League fields. I had in here Jamie Fowler Park, now I find out it's already part of it. Every great city around the world that I've visited has green space for its citizenry and visitors to enjoy. LaFleur's Bluff State Park is that green space. Jamie Fowler Park is part of that green space for the city of Jackson. The Mississippi Sports Hall of Fame supports a comprehensive and cohesive plan for the growth and development of the Lakeland I-55 corridor that supports the current efforts of attractions that already exist in the area. The Board of Directors of the Mississippi Sports Hall of Fame, which includes a former governor, a state senator, a Jackson City Council person, many of Jackson's business leaders, and many more civic-minded citizens, has voted unanimously to oppose this rezoning. Thank you again, and here is the letter for your records from our Board of Directors.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Gerald McWhorter, and I am the Assistant Secretary of State for Public Lands. I have a letter that the Secretary of State has drafted to the Planning Commission setting forth our position regarding this matter. As was pointed out earlier, when the state conveyed this property to the city more than 50 years ago, the deed conveying the property to the city had a limited use condition in it. And if that condition is violated, the property will revert to the state. The property cannot be used for commercial purposes. The limitation is that the property must be used for park purposes. The property has been developed and used for park purposes since it was conveyed to the city. And as Mr. Cleveland eloquently pointed out, there are a number of very high-class museums, great baseball fields, and recreational facilities in this area. So there has been no change in use. And I would like to submit this letter as part of the record to the court report.
Good.
Yes.
All right. You said it, state that again, I don't hear well. You said it, the state of Mississippi, what?
The state of Mississippi conveyed this property to the city more than 50 years ago. And the deed conveying the property to the city has a condition in it that limits the use of the property for parks and recreational purposes. And it cannot be used for commercial purposes without violating that condition. And if it is used for commercial purposes, the property will revert, the city will lose the ownership of the property, and the state will assume the property again.
Thank you.
Ms. Williams, with that being said, I'm not sure that this body, at this point, and then anything further to that point is cleared up.
I need some clarification. We're looking at zoning,
Correct.
if I'm correct, okay? We're looking at zoning, nothing else. The city's got a legal department, state's got a legal department, that's their job. We're looking at a zoning issue here, and that's it. We're looking at a zoning issue from what I see. I mean, that's why you have me here.
All right. So if it were rezoned, what does that mean to his point?
Rezoning is not a use. The reverter clause is if it ceased to be used for that purpose. And that property, there were over 313.5 acres that were deeded to the city some 50 years ago, as Mr. McWhorter has said. There are multiple uses now on those various 300. We're looking at 45 acres or 40 acres if we move the 5 out. Currently on that property now, on those 40 acres, there are some uses that are there now. So this body is charged with looking at zoning. If the city no longer has any park on there, we may have an issue. But the Office of the City Attorney, the Secretary's Office, the Legal Department, whoever will address those matters. But what's before the body today is zoning.
Is everybody clear on that? Mr.
In other words, the substantiation of what the state said the usage could or could not be, that's not the question today, right?
The question is, what type of zoning would you
I
want
say
on
this,
the property?
I'm saying, we were just told by the attorney that the state stipulated that it could not be used for commercial.
That's the use of it, correct. If
So-
you put a
So if we
commercial.
rezone it, and then they start using it for commercial purposes, would that not?
We would have to address that, the city would have to address that.
At a later time, but not today.
Currently, there's a park on the property.
So it's your opinion that this body should proceed with this issue?
My opinion was before this body is a zoning recommendation and not a use recommendation.
Is everybody clear? Very good. Opposition?
Thank you for allowing me to speak. I'm Susan Gerard. I'm the president of the Mississippi Children's Museum. Our board respectfully asks the planning board to consider our strong opposition to the rezoning of Smithville Stadium and surrounding properties for special use to C3. Mississippi Children's Museum is not against economic development. In fact, we've demonstrated through our $28 million in capital infrastructure for a nationally recognized cultural attraction that we are advocates for a vision of growth and comprehensive development. In 2014, the Mississippi Children's Museum took a leadership position with the Mississippi Museum of Natural Science, the Mississippi Agricultural and Forestry Museum, and the Mississippi Sports Hall of Fame to create the LaFleur's Museum District. With significant investment from the Jackson Convention and Visitors Bureau, this district has just begun steps for the growth and development of a nationally recognized travel and tourism district. Wholesale and blanket rezoning to C3 for this area is not compatible with this vision and the multi-million-dollar investments in tourism and travel infrastructure. We would like to strongly encourage the establishment, if this zoning is continued to be pursued, of perpetual covenants or an overlay district with rigid use and design tenets that would be compatible with a museum district. For example, big box retailers, nightclubs, and liquor stores, among others, should be excluded. The Mississippi Children's Museum reaffirms its vision and commitment to providing first-class, family-oriented cultural experiences for the children around our city, state, and nation. We welcome the opportunity to work with city leaders, developers, and our neighbors to strengthen and advance these offerings. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do I have any
Do I have
time
a
left?
spokesperson for the opposition?
Do I have any time left?
4.5 minutes.
4 minutes, my God.
4.5 to be exact.
4.5 minutes. What we don't want this board to lose sight of is that the principal issue is does the city continue to maintain parks and green space? We think that's by your charter, that's what this city is supposed to be doing. Over 300 of the youth that I showed you a picture of out there Saturday utilize Smith Wheels. So this is an issue that needs to keep this for the youth. I started to say I represent all the youth of Jackson. I don't think I can get away with that, but they need a place to go and play. We talk about gangs in the cities. One reason you have gangs is they don't have a place to go. We need to keep this for our youth. Also, now there's a question, and I realize this is a legal question, but were it zoned to C3 uses, that might trigger the reverter at that point because the city would have evidenced in its intent not to use the property for recreational purposes. But this property needs to stay Jamie Broyles Park. It's utilized by the public. The baseball fields are utilized by our youth of this city. Smith Wheels is not a professional team anymore, but it's utilized by all the youth of the city of Jackson. So we ask you to deny the city's request to zone this to a C3 classification.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, we've got a minute.
Mr. Starling,
Wait,
that's a question. That's a
Oh,
question.
excuse me.
I have a question for staff.
Okay, I'm sorry, it's for somebody else.
Okay. I don't want this to be overlooked, that the ballpark in front of Smith Wills Stadium, where the little sign about the rezoning, is Michael D. Johnson Memorial Park. It was named after a Murrah baseball player who passed away years ago. It was a project that was done by the students at Murrah High in his honor. And I would hate, among the many, many reasons I would hate to see this happen, is to see that be a commercial parking lot now. Thank you.
Mr.
Mr. Ames, if this property is rezoned, what is out there on that property now that not stay, that cannot stay?
There's nothing there that can't stay. The zoning ordinance does allow that if there's any use that's there now, that was in operation prior to the zoning ordinance, or prior to the rezoning of the property, that property can remain in use as a grandfathered use. And also, the two zoning classifications that are before you today, both of those classifications do allow for public parks and open spaces. The zoning classifications were chosen with the idea in mind that both the park and the Smithfield Stadium would continue as they are. We took that into consideration when we looked at those zoning classifications. So the idea that those uses would go away, that's not true. Both of those zoning classifications do allow for parks and open spaces.
So it's your opinion that there's less intrusive to seek on you one, and it will allow for your plans to continue from a usage standpoint, as you see the need to be, and for the existing uses to continue also.
Yes.
Questions or comments?
Mr. President, one other to the staff, please. I heard many of the opposition spokespersons state that they're concerned about the traffic. Should we get a traffic survey or traffic, whatever y'all call it? What is the traffic impact on this rezoning?
Well, see, the traffic impact would be decided upon what the use would be. And with any type of new development in that area, they would have to go before our site plan review committee. And that's where issues such as traffic, architectural design, infrastructure, all of those things would be addressed in that process. Yes.
Other questions or comments?
Have any more time?
Show me what Smithfield Stadium is up there on that map. We're zoning that part too?
Yes, sir, it's all a part of that parcel 444-2.
Now, you said 55 acres, right?
Right, 50 acres.
50
acres.
You
Yes.
take 5 out of it.
Yes.
Now, that 50 acres, that would go behind this
No,
stadium?
sir, keep it up to the zoning map. Okay, the 49 point some odd acres on the north side of Lakeland Drive, that's a property that the city owns.
Yeah.
And then the area that's on the south side of Lakeland Drive, that's the 5 acres. And so that's what, makes the 50 acres.
Yeah, but I'm switching on this part here. Now, what is the museum?
Right there, to me.
Okay. And ballpark is where?
Okay. Other questions or comments?
Well, I guess this is my final one. If it's rezoned to a commercial use that would require the ballpark and museum and all that to be torn down, could that be a possibility?
No,
In the future?
It doesn't require that it be torn down. It doesn't
That's
require
a
that.
possibility in the future.
Could be.
Well, I mean, it could be, we don't know what's gonna happen. We just,
That the Secretary of State, as State Land Commissioner, will exercise the state's rights of revision to any property that is rezoned and utilized for any purpose other than a park. This property currently serves as a park. It is a park for the public, has been developed as a park for the public, and should maintain it as a park for the public.
But that issue was addressed.
It will be.
That issue was addressed.
So zoning does have something to do with rezoning.
Ms. Williams, have you addressed that before?
That letter said rezoned and used for anything other than a park. Let's look at use. Use is not before the body, you're looking at rezoning. If you reread the last sentence of the Honorable Secretary of State's letter, if the park is rezoned and used for a non-park purpose.
Is everybody clear on that?
I think Mr. He had 2 more minutes he wanted to,
I have 2 more minutes.
Mr. Starling?
If I understand staff correctly, that all the present uses can stay as being used. First of all, they've been ballparks for 50 years. I assume they're gonna stay ballparks. Why are we rezoning it at all? Just leave it parks and recreation. Then we don't have to argue with anybody. If Smith Wills were not used, say, for 35 days, we don't want the city to say, look, it's not used as a ballpark anymore, even though it's scheduled 2 weeks out to start another activity. So our point, save our parks and recreation, save our parks. Leave them as parks and recreation. Let the city control it. Let the city keep running and providing for the youth of this city parks and recreational facilities. Don't turn it back over to the state. And that's what's going to happen if we don't keep it parks and recreation. I'm through.
Other questions or comments? So let me make sure this hangs through. The CMU1 works for you also.
yeah.
Other questions or comments? What's the pleasure of the body?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the alternative motion be approved. And this is the one, approval of the requested comprehensive rezoning of parcel 442-2 and the designated portion of parcel 444-9 from special use district to community mixed use district, pedestrian OREN, based upon there being a substantial change in the land use character of the surrounding area that justifies rezoning the property and a public need for additional property in that area zoned in accordance with the request and said application since the previous city council action.
Is there a second?
Second motion.
You have a motion and discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I appreciate the work the staff has done in the best interest of the city, but I believe that keeping the special use district is proper in the best interest of the city. I'm going to oppose it.
Any other discussion? In favor of the motion, raise your right hand. Those against the motion, raise your right hand. What is the tally?
Abstention.
Oh, I'm
I'm
sorry.
sorry.
Let's do it over. You have a
We
strike?
have it, it's 3 to
Abstention.
6 with 1 abstention, so the motion fails.
Motion fails. Thank you.
Gerald,
Okay, and then quarter MC.